Rashōmon and 17 Other Tales. In a Bamboo Grove. The testimony of a woodcutter under questioning by the magistrate. That is true, Your Honor. I am the one who found the body. I went out as usual this morning to cut cedar in the hills behind my place. The body was in a bamboo grove on the other side of the mountain. Its exact location? A few hundred yards off the Yomashina Post Road. A deserted place where a few scrub cedar trees are mixed in with the bamboo. The man was lying on his back with his pale blue robe with the sleeves tied up and one of those fancy Kyoto-style black hats with the sharp creases. He had only one stab wound, but it was right in the middle of his chest. The bamboo leaves around the body were soaked with dark red blood. No, the bleeding had stopped. The wound looked dry, and I remember it had a big horsefly sucking on it so hard the thing didn't even notice my footsteps. Did I see a sword? No, sir, not a thing. Just a length of rope by the cedar tree next to the body. And oh yes, there was a comb there too. Just the rope and the comb is all. But the weeds and the bamboo leaves on the ground were pretty trampled down. He must have put up a tremendous fight before they killed him. How's that, sir? A horse? No, a horse could have never gotten into that place. It's all bamboo, thicker between there and the road. The testimony of a traveling priest under question by the magistrate. Oh, I'm sure I passed the man yesterday, Your Honor. Yesterday at about noon, I'd say, near Checkpoint Hill on the way to Yamashina. He was walking toward the checkpoint with a woman on horseback. Well, she wore a stiff, round straw hat with a long veil hanging down around the brim. I couldn't see her face, just her robe. I think it had a dark red outer layer with a blue-green lining. The horse was a dapple gray with a tinge of red, and I'm fairly sure it had a clipped mane. Was it a big horse? Oh, I would say it was a few inches taller than most, but I'm a priest after all. I don't know much about horses. The man? No, sir, he had a good-sized sword, and he was equipped with a bow and arrows. I can still see that black lacquered quiver of his. He must have had 20 arrows in it, maybe more. I would never have dreamed that a thing like this could happen to such a man. What is the life of a human being? A drop of dew, a flash of lightning. This is so sad. So very sad. What can I say? The testimony of a policeman under questioning by the magistrate. The man I captured, Your Honor? Oh, I'm certain he's the famous bandit, Tojimaru. True, when I caught him he had fallen off his horse, and he was moaning and groaning on the stone bridge at Akigaguchi. The time, sir? Oh, it was last night at the first watch. He was wearing the same dark blue robe and carrying the same long sword he used the time I almost captured him before. You can see he also had bow and arrows now. Oh, is that so, sir? The dead man, too? Well, that settles it, then. I'm sure this Tojimaru fellow is the murderer. A leather-wrapped bow, a quiver in black lacquer, and 17 hawk-feather arrows. They must have belonged to the victim. And yes, as you say, sir, the horse is a dappled gray, with a touch of red, and it has a clipped mane. It's only a dumb animal, but it gave that bandit just what he deserved, throwing him like that. It was a short way beyond the bridge, trailing its rays on the ground, and eating plum grass by the road. Of all the bandits prowling around Kyoto, this Tojimaru is known as a fellow who likes the women. Last fall, people at Terbu Temple found a pair of worshippers murdered, a woman and a child, on the hill behind the statue of Binzura. Everybody said Tojimaru must have done it. If it turns out he killed the man, there's no telling what he might have done to the woman who was on the horse. I don't mean to meddle, sir, but I do think you ought to question him about that. The testimony of an old woman under questioning by the magistrate. Why, yes, Your Honor. My daughter was married to the dead man. He's not from the capital, though. He was a samurai serving in the Wakasa provincial office. His name was Kawanza no Tokiharu, and he was 26 years old. No, sir, he was a very kind man. I can't believe anyone would have hated him enough to do this. Oh, my daughter? Oh, her name is Masago, and she is 19. She's as bold as any man, but the only man she's ever known is Takahiro. Her complexion is a little on the dark side, and she has a mole by the outside corner of her left eye, but her face is tiny, a perfect oval. Takahiro left for Wakasa yesterday with my daughter. But what turn of fate could have led to this? There's nothing I can do for my son-in-law anymore, but But what could have happened to my daughter? I'm worried sick about her. Oh, please, sir, do everything you can to find her. Leave no stone unturned. I've lived a long time, but I've never wanted anything so badly in my life. Oh, how I hate that bandit, that Tojimaru. Not only my son-in-law, but my daughter. Here the old woman broke down and was unable to go on speaking. Tojimaru's confession. Sure, I killed the man, but I didn't kill the woman. So where did she go? I don't know any better than you do. Now wait just a minute. You can torture me all you want, but I can't tell you what I don't know. And besides, now that you've got me, I'm not going to hide anything. I'm no coward. I met that couple yesterday, a little after noon. The second I saw them, a puff of wind lifted her veil, and I caught a peek at her. Oh, just a peek. That's maybe why she looked so perfect to me. An absolute Boroshita of a woman. I made up my mind right then to take her, even if I had to kill the man. Oh, come on, killing a man is not as big a thing as people like you seem to think. If you're going to take somebody's woman, the man has to die. When I kill a man, I do it with my sword. But you people don't like to use swords. You gentlemen kill with your power, with your money, and sometimes just with words. You tell people you're doing them a favor. True, no blood flows, the man's still alive, but you kill him all the same. I don't know whose sin is greater, yours or mine. Of course, if you can take the woman without killing the man, all the better, which is exactly what I was hoping to do yesterday. It would have been impossible on the Yamashina post road, of course, so I thought of a way to lure them into the hills. It was easy. I fell in with them on the road and made up a story. I told them I found an old burial mound in the hills, and when I opened it, it was full of swords and mirrors and things. I said I'd buried the stuff in a bamboo grove on the other side of the mountain to keep anyone from finding out about it, and I'd sell it cheap to the right buyer. He started getting interested soon enough. It's scary what greed can do to people, don't you think? In less than an hour, I was leading that couple and their horse up a mountain trail. When we reached the grove, I told them the treasure was buried in there, and they should come inside with me and look at it. The man was so hungry for the stuff by then, he couldn't refuse, but the woman said she'd wait there on the horse. I figured that would happen. The woods are so thick, they fell right into my trap. We left the woman alone and went into the grove. It was all bamboo at first. 50 yards or so inside, there was a sort of open clump of cedars, the perfect place for what I was going to do. I pushed through the thicket and made up some nonsense about the treasure was buried under one of the trees. When he heard that, the man charged towards some scrawny cedars visible up ahead. The bamboo then thinned out, and the trees were all standing there in a row. As soon as we got to them, I grabbed him, pinned him down. I could see he was a strong man. He carried a sword, but I took him by surprise, and he couldn't do a thing. I had him tied to the base of a tree in no time. Oh, where did I get the rope? I'm a thief, you know. I might have to scale walls at any time, so I've always got a piece of rope in my belt. I stuffed his mouth full of bamboo leaves to keep him quiet, and that's all there was to it. Once I finished with the man, I went and told the woman that her husband had suddenly taken ill and she should come and have a look at him. This was another bullseye, of course. She took off her hat and let me lead her by the hand into the grove. As soon as she saw the man tied to the tree, though, she whipped a dagger out of her breast. I never saw a woman with such fire. If I'd been off my guard, she'd have struck that thing right in my gut, and the way she kept coming, she would have done me some damage eventually, no matter how much I dodged. Still, I am Tojimaru. One way or another, I managed to knock the knight out of her hand without even drawing my sword. Even the most spirited woman is going to be helpless if she hasn't got a weapon, and so I was able to make the woman mine without taking her husband's life. Yes, you heard me. I did without taking her husband's life. I wasn't planning to kill him. The woman was on the ground crying, and I was getting ready to run out of the grove and leave her there, when all of a sudden she grabbed my arm like some strong crazy person, and then I heard what she was shouting between sobs. She could hardly catch her breath. Either you or my husband dies. It has to be one of you. It's worse than death for me to have two men see my shame. I went to stay with the one left alive, whether it's you or him. That gave me a sudden wild desire to kill her husband. When I say this, you probably think I'm crueler than you are, but that's because you didn't see the look on her face, and especially You never saw the way her eyes were burning at that moment. When those eyes met mine, I knew I wanted to make her my wife. Let the thunder god kill me, I'd make her my wife. But that was the only thought in my head. And no, not just from lust. I know that's what you gentlemen are thinking. If lust was all I felt for her, I'd have taken care of that. I could have just kicked her down and gotten out of there, and the man would have stained my sword with his blood. But the moment my eyes locked onto hers in that dark grove, I knew I couldn't leave there until I killed him. Still, I didn't want to kill him in a cowardly way, so I untied him, and I challenged him to a sword fight. That piece of rope you found was the one I threw aside. The man looked furious as he drew his big sword, and without a word he sprang at me in rage. I don't have to tell you the outcome of the fight. My sword pierced his breast on the 23rd thrust. Not till the 23rd. I want you to keep that in mind. I still admire him for that. He's the only man who ever lasted even 20 thrusts with me. But as he went down, I lowered my bloody sword and turned toward the woman. But she was gone. I looked for her among the cedars and the bamboo leaves on the ground. They showed no sign she'd even been there. I cocked my ear for any sound of her, but all I could hear was the man's death rattle. Maybe she'd run through the underbrush to call for help when the sword fight started. The thought made me fear for my life, so I grabbed the man's sword, his bow and arrows, and I headed straight for the mountain road. The woman's horse was still there, just chewing on grass. Anything else I could tell you after that would be a waste of breath. I got rid of his sword before coming to Kyoto, though. So, that's my confession. I always knew my head would end up hanging in the tree outside the prison someday. So, let me have the ultimate punishment. Penitent confession of a woman in the Kiyomozu temple. After the man in the dark and blue robe had his way with me, he looked at my husband all tied up and taunted him with laughter. How humiliated my husband must have felt. He squirmed and twisted in the ropes that covered his body, but the knots ate all the deeper into his flesh. Stumbling, I ran to his side. No, I tried to run to him, but instantly the man kicked me down, and that's when it happened. That's when I saw that indescribable glint in my husband's eyes. Truly, it was indescribable. It made me shudder to recall it even now. My husband, unable to speak a word, and yet in that moment his eyes conveyed his whole heart to me. When I saw shining, there was neither anger nor sorrow. It was that cold flash of contempt. Contempt for me. This struck me more painfully than the bandit's kick. I let out a cry, and I collapsed on the spot. When I regained consciousness, the man in the blue was gone. The only one in the grove was my husband, still tied to the cedar tree. I just barely managed to raise myself on the carpet of dead bamboo leaves. I looked into my husband's face. His eyes were exactly as they'd been before. That same cold look of contempt and hatred. How can I describe that emotion that filled my heart then? Shame, sorrow, anger. I staggered over to him. Oh, my husband, now that this has happened, I cannot go on living with you. I am prepared to die here and now, but you, yes, I want you to die as well. You witnessed my shame. I cannot leave you behind with that knowledge. I struggled to say everything I need to say, but my husband simply went on staring at me in disgust. I felt as if my breast would burst open at any moment. But holding my feelings in check, I began to search the bamboo thicket for his sword. The bandit must have taken it. I couldn't find it anywhere, and my husband's bow and arrows were gone as well. But then I had the good luck to find the dagger at my feet. I brandished it before my husband and spoke to him once again. This is the end, then. Please so be good as allow me to take your life. I will quickly follow you in death. When he heard this, my husband finally began moving his lips. Of course, his mouth was stuffed with bamboo leaves, so he couldn't make a sound, but I knew immediately what he was saying. With total contempt for me, he said only, "Do it." Drifting somewhere between dream and reality, I thrust the dagger through his chest of his pale blue robe. Then I lost consciousness again. When I was able to look around me at last, my husband, still tied to the tree, was no longer breathing. Across his ashen face shone a streak of light from the setting sun, filtering through the bamboo and cedar, and gulping down my tears, I untied him and cast the rope aside. And then what happened to me? I no longer have the strength to tell it. That I failed to kill myself is quite obvious. I tried to stab myself in the throat. I threw myself in a pond at the foot of the mountain, but none of it worked. I'm still here, by no means proud of my inability to die. Perhaps even Kenzon, Bosifa of compassion, has turned away from me for being so weak. But now that I've killed my husband, now that I've been violated by a bandit, what am I to do? Tell me, what am I to do? The testimony of the dead man's spirit told through a medium. After the bandit had his way with my wife, he sat there on the ground trying to comfort her. I could say nothing, of course. I was bound to the cedar tree, but I kept trying to signal her with my eyes. Don't believe anything he tells you. He's lying, no matter what he says. I tried to convey my meaning to her, but she just went on cringing there on the fallen bamboo leaves, staring at her knees, and I could see she was listening to him. I withered with jealousy, but the bandit kept his smooth talk going from one point to the next. Now that your flesh has been sullied, things will never be the same with your husband. Don't stay with him. Come, be my wife. It's because I love you so much that I was so wild with you. The bandit had the gall to speak to her like that. When my wife raised her face in response to him, she seemed almost spellbound. I had never seen her look so beautiful as she did at that moment. And what do you think this beautiful wife of mine said to the bandit, in my presence, in the presence of her husband, who was bound hand and foot? My spirit may be wandering now between one life and the next, but every time I recall her answer, I burn with indignation. All right, she told him. Take me anywhere you like. And that was not her only crime against me. If that was all she did, I would not be suffering here in the darkness, with him leading her by the hand. She stepped out of the bamboo grove as if in a dream, and suddenly the color drained from her face. She pointed back to me. Kill him, she screamed. Kill him. I can't be with you as long as he is alive. Again and again she screamed, as if she'd lost her mind. Kill him. Even now her words, like a windstorm, threatened to blow me headlong into the darkest depths. Have such hateful words ever come from the mouth of a human being before? Have such damnable words ever reached the ears of a human being before? Have such... An explosion of derisive laughter. Even the bandit went pale when he heard her. She clung to his arm and screamed again, Kill him. The bandit stared at her, saying neither that he would kill me nor that he would not. The next thing I knew, however, he sent my wife sprawling on the bamboo leaves with a single kick. Another explosion of derisive laughter. The bandit calmly folded his arms and turned to look at me. What do you want me to do with her? He asked. Kill her or let her go? Just not answer. Kill her? For this, if for nothing else, I'm ready to forgive the bandit his crimes. When I hesitated with my answer, my wife let out a scream and darted into the depths of the bamboo thicket. He sprang after her, but I don't think he even managed to lay a hand on her sleeve. I watched the spectacle as if it were some kind of vision. After my wife ran off, the bandit picked up my sword and bow and arrows, and he cut my ropes at one place. Now it's my turn to run, I remember hearing him mutter, as he disappeared from the thicket. Then the whole area was quiet. No, I could hear someone weeping, while I was untying myself. I listened to the sound, until I realized it was my own tears, that I was the one crying. I finally raised myself, exhausted, from the foot of the tree. Lying there before me was the dagger my wife had dropped. I picked it up, and I shoved it into my chest. Some kind of bloody mass rose to my mouth. I felt no pain. My chest grew cold, and everything sank slowly into stillness. What very perfect silence. In the skies above the grove, on the hidden side of the mountain, not a single bird came to sing. The lonely glow of the sun lingered among the high branches of cedar and bamboo. The sun, but gradually, even that began to fade, and with it, the cedars and the bamboo. I lay there, wrapped in a deep silence. Then, stealthily, footsteps came up to me. I tried to see who it was, but the darkness had closed in all around me. Someone, and that someone, gently pulled the dagger from my chest with an invisible hand. Again the rush of blood filled my mouth, but then I sank once and for all into this darkness between the lives. Recorded December 19th, 21.